has said, it is so great to see familiar faces, our members and regulars, and of course, so many new people are joining this incredible community for a very exciting day. So welcome to all of you, not just on our Zoom call, but as Cam said, streaming live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and of course, Facebook as well. So welcome, welcome. Now, for those of you who are new and don't yet know me, my name is Alex Twilio. I'm the CEO of Financial Executive Women, and we're a membership organisation that's all about positive progression of women and addressing gender equality in the workplace. And so excited to welcome Mick and of course Violet as well on as our newest corporate partnership with Sandstone Technology, because we're super passionate, both of us, about really working towards getting more women in tech as well. So if that's not exciting enough, it is, as Cam said, our inaugural Digital First Banking Transformation series. Now, maybe by a bit of context for you. So for those of you who are new, we at Few have been showing up 3 days a week, live streaming for just about 6 months now, ever since we've been in this beautiful pandemic that we're in. And our community is full of industry leaders and thought leaders and really incredible professionals. And in our live streams, we share and exchange knowledge and wisdom and all sorts of insights. So of course, as we bring you different guests and different themes, we always ask our audience, what would you like to know more about? What is the thematically, what are the things that you'd like to hear about? And one of the really strong themes that has come up over the last couple of months especially is very much around a lot of you being challenged by how to navigate the so-called digital revolution, especially from a business perspective. So Mick, you and I got talking, we were talking already about a partnership, and it seemed like a natural evolution of a live stream to then really zero in on everything around digital first, banking transformation, speaking to thought leaders around this topic and having some super interesting conversations. So official welcome to you, my friend, as my newest co-host, Mick Philippou, Chief Customer Officer of Sandstone Technology. Mate, great to have you here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Alex, and good afternoon to you and everyone that's listening. Look, it's certainly very exciting to be launching the Digital First, the Banking Transformation series today. It feels like banks and financial institutions are right now going through an unprecedented period of transformation, with technology obviously being at the core of this. Now, banking is changing rapidly, so all financial institutions, boards and executives are contemplating, how do we best compete in the digital world and future-proof our business to meet the demands of customers, not only now, but also in the future? So there's complexity in solving for these challenges, which is why I'm really excited that through this series, we'll have the opportunity to speak with the thought leaders in banking transformation, gain insights into their journeys, as well as hear where they think the world is going. So we obviously have a number of very wonderful guests that are going to be joining us over the next few weeks. And kicking off, obviously today as our inaugural guest is the Director of People and Performance and co-founder of Sandstone Technology, Violet Yu. And next week we'll have a very special guest in Joseph Healy, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Judo Bank, a wonderful SME bank that's making great traction in the Australian market. Now, for today's very special guest, for those of you that have not yet met Violet, she has a very, very impressive background. She holds a Bachelor of Economics, majoring in computer science, accounting, and econometrics. Violet's career in technology and financial services spans over 30 years, having held positions in technical, business, leadership, and senior management roles. Deeply passionate about making things better for people, customers, and partners. During her distinguished career, Violet has worked on and helped drive the success of large transformation programs for major international and tier one financial institutions, amongst others, across countries including South Africa, the United Kingdom, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. That's a tongue twister. A passionate technologist, financial services and banking industry professional, Violet is now the Director of People and Performance for Sandstone Technology, a market-leading financial technology company which she co-founded over 20 years ago. Having done just about every role in Sandstone from its initial founding to having now built an enviable list of customers and a full suite of market-leading digital transformation products, Violet is now focused on attracting and retaining the best people and building and maintaining a high-performance culture while continuing to maintain a heavy influence on the strategic direction of the organisation. Her vast experience in fintech, combined with our unwavering commitment of continuous self-improvement, and a passion to grow Australian companies locally and globally has seen her flourish in an industry driven by innovation. Welcome to you, Violet, and thank you very much for joining us. What an impressive background that you have. Can you tell us a little bit about your career and where it all started?
Oh, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Mick, and thanks for having me on this wonderful platform, Alex.
Oh, pleasure. We're excited to have you here, Violet.
Thank you very much. Look, where do I start? Oh, well, I guess my career starts probably similar to when I graduated from university after Bachelor of Economics. I searched. I was probably in those days when I started. There's very few women in IT, and I was very keen to join the IT industry. So I picked what was then the largest IT company in the world, IBM, and joined them as a trainee there. And I remember when I first joined, we had a whole batch of trainees, and we had to go through what was called a ELT program, entry-level trainee program. At that time, IBM was the biggest IT company in the world and had a fabulous training program. I met some fabulous people in IBM. And I guess I really learned a lot in my time in IBM, really enjoyed my time there. But after 7 years working in IBM, I thought it was time to do something different. At that time, I was thinking of actually not so much of starting my own company, more of trying something different just because I've done IBM. My partner at the time, Bob Ho, who co-founded Sandstone Technology with me, always wanted to start a software company. And I don't know, for the young people that now thinks going into a fintech company is very, very sexy. In those days, it wasn't considered sexy at all. In fact, Bob was trying to find co-founders for the company, and it was absolutely impossible to convince other people that he thought it would be really good co-founders to join him because it was just such a risky thing to do. They all had well-paid jobs, most of them IBM. And well, I was out looking for my own career. I got quite a few job offers very quickly. And at that time, I was still in my 20s. I think I was young and a little bit arrogant and thinking, okay, if it's that easy to find jobs, why don't I try something completely different? So I joined up with Bob to start this IT company, really with the aim not so much to build a great company, but to build something we both love doing. We both love technology, and we both want to deliver better software and work with really smart people. That was what we started off doing. So that's how it all started.
Violet, so I'm going to jump in, Mick, because I've got so many questions I want to ask you here. So, and I love how you said, for people today, because now fintech, you're right, it's the thing, isn't it? Fintech
Yes.
everywhere.
Yes.
So when you made that decision to jump in with Bob, did it feel like it was a big risk to you? That did you actually feel the enormity of what you were doing, or did it just seem like, well, I want to work with smart people, I love technology, let's just do it? Like how did that feel to you at the time?
I guess like I said, I was a little bit young and naive in those days, and I was probably a little bit arrogant as well because it was very easy for me to find another role, and I got offered quite a few roles very quickly when I decided to leave IBM. So what I did was my plan was, let's just do this for a year, and if we're not successful in a year, we will go back and find a job. So it was a very simple plan. In fact, not much of a plan at all.
I love it. Those are the days when you don't think too hard about the risks, you just jump in and do. So obviously it was more than just a year. So can you tell us a bit more? And I know, Mick, you'll want to unpack this as well. From that initial moment, well, if it's a year, we'll just go and find a job. Yeah. So tell us a bit about the journey. I'm sure there were many, many challenges and triumphs along the way.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The journey was not what we expected at all. I think initially just to find people who want to join us has been really difficult. So we ended up just becoming the two of us working together. That wasn't our plan. Our plan was to have a whole group of people working together, but nobody wants to give up their well-paid jobs and join a two-people company who can't afford to pay them. We couldn't pay anybody. We couldn't even pay ourselves. So instead of actually getting an income, we were actually taking money out of mortgage to support ourselves. So but we sort of at that time, it was just the start of the internet age. So internet was a fairly new thing at the time. So we had a lot of freedom to think about what we want to do. We know we want to build great software. We know we want to build great software for financial institutions because that's our background. But we didn't really know what software we want to build. So we did look at what was, what do we want to do at the time. So the journey, and from there, we sort of looked at internet banking at the time was fairly new. I think there's only one bank at the time, and probably a lot of people here probably haven't even heard of the bank. It was Advanced Bank, had internet banking. And when we saw that, we just fell in love with that. We thought this is the future, and we need to do something with that. And it's really about, so there's a number of, a number of issues with that. So we decided we want to build. We start building it. It was all nice and well, but you still need money. I remember even just starting the company, being young. Not at the time we don't have any kids. We didn't have any kids. We didn't have we did have a mortgage, but we were pretty young and carefree. So what we did was we were very lucky. I was very lucky at that time. Computer software and hardware are all very, very expensive compared to it is now. Right. We couldn't really afford to buy a computer, and I was really, really lucky. I had a friend who runs a computer hardware shop, and he generously donated a computer to us, and I'll be forever grateful for that. And another friend of Bob's donated a printer to us, and that's how we kicked off in the back room of our house. So certainly, I think you asked about the journey. I mean, that it's quite a much longer journey than we expected. After a year, we got absolutely nowhere. We spent a lot of time. Bob spent a lot of time writing the software. He's a computer genius, and he's always loved writing his own software. And I'm also technical myself. To get some income, I also took some contract work with IBM, implementing lending systems implementing banking systems in countries like Italy and South Africa. And, I enjoyed it, but it was more just make money to fund our software. Of course, after with 2 people company at that time, fintech was not the hot thing it is now. Nobody wants to talk to a 2 people company. We called every single bank, and nobody wants to talk to us. Who are you? Who's Sandstone Technology? We even went to South Africa, and we went to Indonesia. We went to a few places that we contracted to just to see if we can interest them in our software. And after a year, we went absolutely nowhere. So our plan did not go to plan.
What was that, Violet? That's extraordinary. It must have been so grueling early on. You feel like you're climbing up the mountain and there's just still the peak so far away to get to. What was the tipping point when you started to gain traction in the company?
Okay. Well, so the tip. So, I mean, we could give them up after a year, but we decided that we really believed in what we've built, and we actually started to enjoy the life of really being our boss. So we said, let's just persevere for another year. And we did persevere. And at that time, there was a bank called Adelaide Bank. It's now part of the Bendigo Adelaide Bank. And in fact, a friend of ours called us up and said, do you know about this bank? I said, well, let me try that bank. I haven't heard that bank. Let's go and try that bank. So we called up the bank, and we were very fortunate. The IT manager at the time, I think, had just gone out to the market in search of an internet banking system. And we were very fortunate to meet somebody with a really, really open mind. And they've got quotations of $1 million for the internet banking system. And we went in there and we said, please just give us a go. We will give you the software for free. Just pay us for our time implementing it, but we'll give you software for free. Just try us. And for us, they give us a chance.
And I think cast your mind back over it's 25 years coming up in terms of anniversary next year. And I think we've even got some of our customers online listening today. So it's just fantastic on how many people you've touched over that 25-year journey and how important Sandstone is to banks as a partner today. When do you think you noticed a big shift in the reception from banks themselves? You got that underway with Adelaide Bank. When was what have you seen in terms of that real shift in banks actually starting to embrace technology in those early days? Because as we've said, look, that's 25 years ago, and fintech was virtually not even a word that we'd heard about back then. What was that defining moment?
I guess definitely. I think when we first started, we had to go to the banks and tell them they should use the internet. I remember having to build business cases to say why they should use the internet for banking. It was actually quite a extraordinary turnaround now, but certainly, and I guess we had to go through then the dot-com boom start heading up. The dot-com boom went up, and a lot of internet companies starting to become overnight successes. And of course, we were also, there was a lot of internet companies that came after us and suddenly went become overnight successes. And at that time, we actually thought maybe we were being very slow, because even though we had a lot of offers on the table for all the internet companies, we just felt it was too much of a bubble. Too much of a bubble. We wanted to build a stable, proper company that's long lasting. And it's during the internet boom, I guess after Adelaide Bank, after we launched the very first browser-based internet banking system in Australia for Adelaide Bank. And even after that, though, we are still only after we started, we were able to get a contract at Adelaide Bank, we started to hire people. And at that time, hiring people to a two-person company is still very, very difficult. Very hard to convince people to join a two-person company. And but the second big customer we got was actually we went to a building society conference, and we convinced 4 building societies to join up and sign a contract that we will provide internet banking systems to them. And once the building societies start coming on board, I think at that stage, the big banks also starting to get into the internet banking side of it. But at that time, internet banking wasn't seen as an essential channel. It's more as a cost-cutting exercise, rather than as today it is really the key banking channel for customers.
Violet, first of all, I have a very important question to ask you. Do you still have the first computer and the first printer that were donated to you in a beautiful glass box or something to preserve?
I wish I had kept them. I wish I had kept them. Yeah.
Honestly, I love that story because, and there are so many layers to your story, because as someone who's entrepreneurial, a woman, you've built, as Mick says, this incredible business now, and I want to have a chat about where you are today. But the thing I'm really curious about, as you talk about, it was just you and Bob. You had to convince, you were unknown, two-person company, everything you've said, you had to convince, naturally conservative businesses being banks,
yep,
that this thing was going to happen.
Yep.
What was the belief? Like, what the vision that obviously you and Bob had, that this was the future, that it was the internet, that it was going to be technology for banks? What was your belief in that vision? And because I'd love to know also what you see coming now. So obviously you've got a real talent for looking at what's coming next. But what was that had you so convinced that you were happy to go and give away software for free just to get in the door?
We had a lot of experience ourselves. I mean, even in IBM, we both worked in the financial services industry and produced software for banks. And we did a lot of this work. And we saw for ourselves how even very big companies like IBM can spend millions of dollars producing systems that we thought we could do better, faster, cheaper. And we really believed in that. There wasn't so much just the internet, but a lot of it is about our ability to be able to give better value to the banks and to our customers. We believe we could do that, whether it be internet banking or some other software. In fact, we quickly branched out of internet banking into other areas. As banks tell us, this is what we need. We quickly branched out into voice, telephone banking. We then branched out into lending systems. We branched out into insurance systems, because I guess both Bob and I are having technical backgrounds. We both just love building software. Yeah, we're building software. We believe in what we're building. We also having had experience working in IBM. Know that there's a gap there. We really know there is a gap there. And we just wanted the banks to to try us, and we believe if they just try us, and they will realize this benefit there. The key for us is we're also very appreciative of the fact that we were very lucky to run into leaders in banks, such as the Adelaide Bank, and I think our second class, the building societies. I think we had a GIO, field people that we came across just believed in us enough to give us a chance. So we are always grateful to those customers that give us a chance. And I always tell our staff that customers don't need us, we need the customers. We need to make sure we deliver the best for the customer. And it's always our belief that if they put our trust in us, we must not let them down. So our absolute belief has always been, if we do the right thing by our customer, we do the right thing by our staff, word will get out, and we'll get there. Even we may be slow, but certainly especially in the dot-com boom, we always thought, why are we so slow? Everybody else is booming, and but we always believe. But when we look at a lot of the substance of those companies, they didn't have any products. They didn't have real customers. It was all hot air, and we said we believe that we had something real to offer.
And what comes through there, Violet, and it comes through every day. If we don't love our customers, someone else will, and really hear that resonate from yourself and Bob, every day that we work here at Sandstone. You've worked with so many wonderful customers. Is there one that sticks out that you're just so proud of in terms of being able to help them come through the other end of a tricky situation? Because as you've alluded to before, that these transformation programs are very, very complex by nature, and quite often, without putting words in your mouth, Sandstone has come in after other organisations have been there trying to deliver programs, and we've been able to help bring it back to bear and bring those programs back on track. Can you think about a time where you think, gee whiz, that really stands out, that we're able to help that customer out of a very, very tricky situation?
Yeah, I can think of quite a few. In fact, that's how we got into most of those customers in the early days. This trip, by helping them out of tricky situations that no one else could help them. That's why they turned to us. I guess Adelaide Bank always been is a good one because they are the first customer. They're always going to be very dear to my heart because they're the very first one that believed in us. But another one that really sticks out was actually ANZ Bank back in. Even though our lending program started at ANZ Bank probably about 10 years ago, we actually had a very much longer relationship with ANZ. I think back from quite a bit earlier than that, when in the early days of the internet, when ANZ just was trying to push out this internet lending out. It wasn't in those days. It wasn't like today. We got automated. We got such a sophisticated lending system. We can lend fast. In those days, ANZ would put up just a single page to capture customer information on the internet, and then wait for the customers to come in. We had once again the person that was the head of e-commerce at the time. Once again, was an extremely, I guess, visionary person. He put this thing out, and the response was so good. I didn't have enough people to actually be able to translate the information from the web page into their backend Hogan systems. They have to hire a whole lot of people just to do that part of it. So that then in a way that actually they couldn't really get the benefit of having all these people applying over the internet, but then they have to hire a whole army of people to then translate the information into their backend Hogan system.
And when you think about technology today, you were one of the pioneers that's really helped shape the landscape of the technology solutions that have gone into banks and those digital channels. What do you think is going to be the next wave of technology to be able to help that automation process for banking?
The next wave of technology. I guess the next wave of technology to me, it's probably a number of things. I mean, the banks have changed a lot since our early days. Certainly nowadays, the fintech is definitely a much more going to play a much more key role with the banks. So I think one of the key things is going forward, the consumers, the power balance between the banks and the consumers has quite shifted a bit. The consumers are going to be, dictating what experience they want. So having great consumer experience, and I think that will include things like having systems, that digital transformation systems that will offer straight-through processing very quickly, artificial intelligence that are able to like analyze things much more quicker and be able to have intelligent answers to return back to customers. And increasingly, often, I just look at, for example, COVID-19. The impact of COVID-19 is really pushed forward the transformation of digitization of banks. And that's going to only increase. And that will be such things such as, increasingly, consumers are going to try to self-service. So we need to make sure we have great systems to help them to easily self-service and apply for mortgages, change their mortgage terms, or change their loans, do a lot of things online, a lot more things online rather than going to branch.
I'd like to dig a bit more into that, Violet, because it's really interesting, isn't it, where we are? I mean, we all know the last 6 months, and we're, as you say, COVID, and I know, Mick, you talk about this a lot as well, that it's really the catalyst. It's amplified everything, and this focus on, it's pushed it forward, as you say, Violet, around this digital transformation. But there's a lot to that, isn't there? I'm really curious about when you're working with, your clients and banks, and obviously a lot of this community, are professionals in this space. There's so many things to this, because you've got to consider, as you say, the demand from the consumer experience. Like, it's not just about cutting costs and doing it faster. Exactly. It's also got to be a great experience and take into account it's a heavily regulated environment, so compliance, legacy systems, so you can't just start from fresh. What do you think are some of the most challenging things in all of that for people in the banking industry as they try and navigate this real push forward into digital transformation?
Yeah, I think certainly compliance is a major consideration, and that's a lot of our efforts is in making sure we have compliant systems. But in terms for the banks, I think the biggest challenge is how do they keep up the fintechs? How do they actually work with the there's lots of new banks coming up now that actually directly challenging the banks. As I believe, actually, the banks are with the scale of the banks, what they need to partner with the fintechs to really, make sure they innovate and stay ahead of the new banks.
Which is a whole nother thing, isn't it? Because I'd love to explore, collaborations. I think it's changing from banks being able to just see the neobanks and the fintechs as competition. Got to embrace it and work together.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I mean, obviously now, Sandstone today, obviously, Mick, you work there as well and love it. I mean, this is now a business that has global reach. Are you seeing different trends overseas than what's happening in Australia? Are other countries more advanced? What are you seeing there from the fact that you have this global view of what's happening in this space?
I think in Australia, in a way, I certainly spent quite a bit of time in the UK, and I try to keep up to date what's happening in terms of banking space. I certainly think in many ways Australia is ahead of the rest of the world in terms of digital transformation, digital banking. Certainly where we are, and I certainly think the Australian companies, such as ourselves, there's a lot of opportunities for us to help shape some of the transformation. But increasingly, it can't be everything to everybody. You've got to actually be really good at what you do, and I always believe in being a really good niche player than try to be everything to everybody and be mediocre at it. And I think that's a trend across the world. Is increasingly there's a lot more niche players that create the best of breed, and you might have and that's certainly the trend I'm seeing everywhere.
And Violet, now to I guess digress a little bit, but very pertinent to our discussion. Being a female founder back 25 years ago, Alex also a founder. Female, we're getting much greater diversity and representation, and hence we're getting much stronger companies as a result of that diversity. What do you say about the participation or diversity and female representation in technology? How have you seen that grow and evolve over the last 25 years?
Oh, I definitely think it's come a long way, though it's still got a long way to go. So as I mentioned before, when I first started in IBM, as a batch of I think a few dozen trainees, I was one of few females in there. IBM was a fabulous environment, and it was it was very encouraging of women. So I really had no issues there. But I certainly noticed, even as we are trying to hire people, that there is generally there's just not as many females applying for the sort of jobs we are hiring for as I like, and we certainly make a conscious effort to do that. Having said that, though, the industry and both in financial services and technology has really changed a lot. If you look at when I started, I can't remember any female CEOs or female people like Alex, But nowadays, if I look at the banking industry, I think Citibank just appointed the very first Wall Street major bank female CEO. Even in Australia and New Zealand, there are now so many female leaders now. People like Marnie Baker of Bendigo Bank, Angela Mentis of BNZ, Race Marino of ME Bank, Donna Cooper of TSB, Victoria Schultz of ASB. So we've got quite a few now. There's increasing number of female leaders there. And not only that's at the top executive level, but at the grassroots level, I've also seen some great things happening. I got two teenage daughters, and I can see the programs such as I think Girls in Coding and various initiatives that really help to open up the technology door for women and girls to get into this field. I think that's really encouraging.
It is encouraging, and yeah, you beat me to it, Mick, because I'm curious about this as well. I mean, do you think, I agree, more and more we're seeing more women in these leadership roles, but as you say, it's not happening fast enough and it's not enough. But what about women in tech? And as you just alluded to, Violet, it's starting at the grassroots, it's starting to, open up a bit. Do you think there are barriers to, why is there not more women in technology as well? What do you think the barriers have been there?
I think there's probably a perception issue as well, and maybe the work culture. I think application development, for example, is always said to be a bit of nerdy sort of area. So women are probably more where they say people-oriented skills are probably less applicable, which is probably a misconception, because I know working in the IT industry, you've got to have people skills. People skills is really, really important. And whether it doesn't matter what role you work in, without the right people skills and communication skills, you're not gonna get it. So I think there's a perception issue. There's also, I know traditionally IT industry is considered very, very long work hours. I still remember myself, even when I was working in IBM and certainly in Sandstone, I was starting my own company. I made a choice myself. No one forced me to do it, but I was working incredibly long hours. And that might not be the most family-friendly environment. Now companies are getting much, much better. We've tried to have much more flexible working hours, flexible working environments. But the IT industry is very much deadline-driven, project-based industry. So I think we can. There's certainly a lot that can be done to change the image of IT, and also making the work environment be more family friendly.
Before you throw the questions to the floor, Alex, there was a question that's come through via another channel. 25 years ago, you're in a male-dominated industry, technology-wise. We have come a long way. Tell us about some of the challenges you must have been up against as a female in a male-dominated industry, and and this might be a nice, neat segue into some of the questions we can see on the floor. But what did you have to overcome in order to? Because you were accepted. I obviously know your story, and you're one of the forefront, one of the leaders, arguably the best salesperson that IBM had across APAC back in those days. What were some of those challenges like to be in that environment?
To be honest, I was not a salesperson. I was not a salesperson in IBM. I was never the front. I was never a frontline person. I mean, IBM, they offered me a sales role when I joined, and I turned that down because I prefer an IT technology role. So So it was pretty mistake at the time because IBM sales had one of the best training for training courses. But regardless, I think I think I've been very fortunate, to be honest. I have I certainly I've always applied myself coming from a background where I guess coming from an Asian background as well. I mean, it's Asian and female. I guess culturally, I've always accepted that you work hard and you. It's not about what I guess not what people see in you. It's about how much you get done. So I always believed that if you work hard, it's. I've never tried to be. I guess myself personally, I wouldn't say I've come across a lot of personal issues with in the industry with how I was treated. But I certainly do see instances where I do see, for example, in meetings, I would often feel like someone would, a female would say something, and then it's sort of no one's going to hear it. So this sort of is, I certainly have seen that happening. I guess I started my own company fairly young, so I was and when I was in IBM, I was largely in technology roles, so which is very much about get stuff done rather than presenting in boardrooms and that sort of stuff. So I think I've probably been very lucky in that respect.
Well, I mean, it's luck, but it's also an incredible amount of hard work and taking risk and grabbing opportunities and believing in yourself and your vision and your skills. And our regular audience will hear me say this quite often. We have these incredible guests like yourself on Violet, and I know you, like everyone, is just so understated about what you've achieved. I know it's hard when you're talking about yourself. So you have achieved an amazing amount. As you said, there's a couple of questions if you're happy. So we've got one question that, if you were starting Sandstone today, what would you do differently? Do you think it'd be harder or easier to get a start? It's a really good question.
That's actually a very good question. I've been thinking about that. I think it's got to be both easier and harder. Okay, easier because there is not so much more resources available for startups. There are now, in the internet is so much richer. You can find anything there. When I started, the internet was in the early stages. There was no Google. There was no, Gmail. There was Facebook wasn't there. LinkedIn wasn't there. Instagram wasn't there. So we had to really create things ourselves. We had to write a lot of things we didn't need to write now. When I say write, I mean writing code. Invent things we didn't have to invent now. We had to invent our own security modules because we weren't allowed to import them from the US, for example. We had to really write our own security modules. We had to, I remember in my days, I had to basically, I wrote every single contract, early contracts for Sandstone, the software license contract, service contract. I had to do everything myself. I had to be my own business analyst, my own developer, my own project manager. So I think in that sense, it may be more difficult in those days. But on the other hand, because we were very rare, I guess we were a little bit of novelty. Whereas nowadays there is a lot more resources. There's also a lot more competition. So we often get approached even today by people with fresh new ideas saying, "I got a great idea. Can we do this?" And a lot of times there's a lot more people willing to take that risk. In my days, very few people willing to take that risk. So it's very hard for me to convince people to join us. I remember the early employees we had to hire, the most people we know from IBM days. And it's really quite difficult to convince them to join us. These days, we're very proud of the fact that most of our staff, a lot of staff here has been in Sandstone for a long time. We have very good history returning staff, but still, I do lose staff to fintechs, right, to startups. And that's unusual. In my days, it's the other way around. Nobody wants to join a startup.
It's so fascinating when you say, because I think you're right. In some respects, it's harder, some easier. Anything you do differently? Do you ever, or maybe you don't look back. Some people look back and go, gosh, I would do that differently, and others don't. So what do you think about that?
I would, when I think back on it, would I do anything differently? I don't think so. I don't think I would do anything differently. I mean, we could have done things differently even in the early days, and we chose not to. For example, we could have gone out to investors and raised money rather than trying to bootstrap everything. And we might have been able to get to where we are very faster. But I've seen many companies that went that way, and they no longer exist. We decided to just do one step at a time, get it right, and make sure we always, our guiding principle is do the right thing by the staff and do the right thing by the customer. Good things will come, even if it's slow. And we were always very conscious, even from the early days when we didn't have money to pay ourselves. We always made sure our staff gets paid well. We would go, we help pay for ages, and always our staff always come first. And I think that if I do anything differently, no, I would not do anything differently. We probably still wouldn't go out and raise money. We probably still will do it in a stable, in a slow, steady way to make sure we really, really are responsible for our stakeholders before we try to expand too fast.
And you said a few times, you've used the word sustainable substance. And that's the thing, it's quite remarkable what you've built without any investors or any of that, especially in the early days. I told you this time would go so fast, and we're nearly at the end, but Tony's asked a good question, which I'd like to just ask you. So Tony asks, Violet, what do you think about corporates getting into the classroom to encourage girls to get involved in STEM subjects at an earlier age?
I think that's a wonderful idea. In fact, we have, we had taken in trainees and work experience students in just really to encourage them to look at IT as an option. I think that would be a great idea, because often it's not often girls don't think about IT as an option. It's not that they won't be good at it or they won't like it. I know myself, I got into IT by accident, purely by accident. Just because when I was in high school, I would never even consider IT as a career at all. I used to want to be a writer and something else completely different. But when I was in high school, one of the teachers said, I have a ticket to Apple Symposium. Would anybody be interested? And nobody put their hand up. So I put my hand up to go. And I was actually, that's the first time I've seen computers. I've seen, in those days, people these days are grew up computers. In my days, it's a novelty. And when I saw that, I thought, oh, this is what I want to do.
Wow, so good. Oh, I feel like we could ask you another 20 questions, but Mick, have you got any final question for Violet before we wrap up?
Well, Violet, 25 years in and flourishing Sandstone over a number of different continents now, what advice do you give to people that are contemplating a jump or a move into the technology industry?
Whether it be jumping into the technology industry or starting your own business or just basically advancing your career, I think my advice would be pretty consistent. I would say believe in yourself is something I learned along the way. Starting very young, I didn't believe in myself. I always felt I always try to look for guidance elsewhere. But having said that, believe in yourself, but always be open to learning, new learnings, new ideas, and guidance. And always seek diversified opinions to going forward, and be adaptable. Because one of the things I've learned in 25 years is you do have to change. As a company grows from 2 people company to a 360 people company, there's a lot of changes in that time. And I have to adapt the way I run the company. I have to adapt the way I think about the staff. I think about I have to adapt the way I think about management. The people that might be very good at running the company 25 years ago probably won't be the same people that we run the company nowadays. So be adaptable, be open to learning, but believe in yourself.
That is such great advice. And you're right, you've got to adapt and grow. Thank you so much, Violet, for joining us on our inaugural, Mick, our very first digital first banking transformation series. Woohoo. Violet, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. You are truly an inspiration as a woman, an entrepreneur, a business owner, and thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us today. And thank you everyone who's tuned in. Mick, I know you're as excited as I am for our Thursday series coming up, because we're going to have so many interesting conversations like this around this concept of the digital revolution, why it's challenging, it's complex, and we'll hear from loads of different leaders and thought leaders about their journey, what's worked, what hasn't, and everything in between.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
Well done, Violet, and thanks, Alex. As you say, it is a very exciting period, and we've got a wonderful 6 months series ahead of us where we're going to speak to all the thought leaders at the forefront of digital banking and the transformation that's associated with that. So thanks for tuning in.
Wonderful, everyone. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of the week. It's Thursday, our last show for the week, but we will see you back on Tuesday for the diversity series. So stay tuned. Thanks again, Violet. Thanks, Mick. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Violet.